Good morning, everyone who join us today here and who watch us online. We start our next press conference, the presentation of the book about the problems of civilians in Donbas to live despite it all. Denysenko, co-author, and NGO Human Rights Research Center. Yevhenia Bardyak, co-founder and head of NGO Young Prosvita of Prykarpattya, and Katerina Kotlerova, and Alina Bodnar, editor and the composer and project manager of NGO Eastern-Ukrainian Center for Civil Initiatives. I'm Alina Bodnar, and I'm going to tell you why we are here today with our book. And this book, it is called To Live Despite It All. It covers 6 topics connected with the problems civilians face in military conflict in Donbas. These are the topics connected with the shellings of densely populated areas, town settlements and villages, and also topic connected with the legal actions in controlled areas in Lugansk in connection with the network of detention facilities and connected with the Batman illegal group, and military equipment is placed there, and also there is no quality health care in Donbas in times of war. And we have 6 authors who represent 6 NGOs who are the Coalition for Peace in Donbas. It was created in 2014 to document human rights violations in the course of the war in Donbas, and each of the authors selected the topic and analyzed the information provided by people, and also added data from open sources and provided a number of recommendations to institutions in Ukraine and abroad. This book is published in English and Ukrainian, and also there will be an e-book presented on the web page of the coalition. So all these topics, they are so different and they are connected. So some people, they were not able or didn't want to flee those territories, and they now live in these difficult conditions, the conditions of war in Donbas. And I would like to give the floor to my colleague Yevhenia Bardyak, and she's going to tell us about her topic about medical help in times of war. Good afternoon. So I worked on the section of the book concerning medical help, and this was presented in 3 parts: provision of medical help in controlled territories, medical help at the line and in the gray area, and medical help in non-controlled territories. The information was collected from people who had access to sources. These were military doctors who served at the front line in 2015, and also information from open sources. So after the report, we also interviewed other people, local doctors, civilian doctors, and people who sometimes cross the contact line, who face the need in medical assistance while crossing checkpoints. So all these people, they told us about some problems they face, and I would like to address an important topic for me. So often people from controlled territories, they go to get medical assistance in occupied territories and vice versa. People from occupied territories go to controlled territories. So we have such a situation. Why they go to this occupied territory? As a doctor, I know that in Donetsk they have a powerful medical school in traumatology, oncology, and they have very good department for treatment of burns. They had powerful equipment, and all this equipment is still in Donetsk. Some of the specialists fled, but at the same time, people who need help, who need highly specialized help, and who live closer to Donetsk, even if they live in controlled territories, still they go to Donetsk to get this help. So we have such facts. At the same time, people from occupied territory go to Ukraine in order to get medical help, also having some reasons for this. Also, there is such a thing that people who are IDPs, but often they go to Makiyivka in order to check whether everything is okay with their house. They shared the information that, for example, they have doctors they know, their friends, their colleagues, and they asked for medical assistance here, and this operation is really costly, and they shared this information with their colleagues from other side, and the doctors proposed to come to occupied territory and to carry out this operation because it is it costs less in occupied territories. So we have such a thing, and I believe that it will continue. So what I didn't cover in this report, because I didn't have this information at the time, this year, as I remember, we have an order in non-controlled territories, in occupied territories. There is such an order. It says that people who hold some positions, they cannot leave from the territory. And this order covered doctors who are the heads of the departments, and according to the words of the witnesses, the doctors, if they want to go from this territory to get pension or to visit relatives, they often they are discharged from their positions. They become just doctors, simple doctors. And you can find a lot of other information in our book. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My section is titled The Black Saturday. This January 24th of 2015 in Mariupol. It was a larger scale shooting on the settled area, on a big town, more than 100 wounded and 30 deceased. This shell and also damaged the buildings. 13 interviews with respondents. Each interview was 1 hour long. The respondents are from different age groups. They didn't know each other. This tragedy united them, so they are civilians of different occupations, but they are united by this Black Saturday when we were talking with them, our methodology was composed of two parts. The first was general, where the monitors or those who documented the human rights violations, or journalists asked questions. The second part was it concerned the outlook, what people feel after 3 years. What do they feel about peace, about the ways to achieve this peace? Who should resolve this issue? Who is responsible for peacekeeping? And what are the next steps, what they should be? People thought it is the government, mostly people, the respondents said that the money which circulate in the ATO or the United Forces operation, they also interfere with achieving the stable peace. There were some people who said that and I agree with them, that there are no such controversies or disagreements which would push people to take arms in hands and kill each other. I liked some of the interviews, they are available in the report, where people told us about the human values cases where they were represented. One morning people went to the market, to the church. She was injured near the supermarket in Mariupol, and thanks to the professional actions of the guard, head of the supermarket, he provided her first aid. And when he lost conscience, he even documented on the paper the time when she got unconscious, so that the ambulance knew, so that the hand is not amputed. So thanks to his professional action, this woman now has not her hand amputed. So some cases demonstrated really human values of Ukrainians. In the first days, in the first time, thanks to the governmental support and national charitable organizations or NGOs, people were provided some aid. And now when people are discharged from the hospital, the government has no strategy or policy how to address the problems of these people, their fate. So the Coalition for Peace in Donbas found that the government now do not register civilian injured persons, when there is no registration, when we do not know the number of people in need. I think that it is impossible to develop any instruments or strategies to address the needs when we do not know their scope. Local authorities have some statistics, but the national level lacks such statistics. There is the United Nations statistics, 7,000 to 9,000 persons, it says, but United registration and the counting, I think, is not so big problem, and the government is capable of doing this. Also, the report reveals the problem of physical and material damages. Some people lost their property, the buildings or the cars. In some cases, they were sometimes their sole source of incomes. So these people, they use Article 19 on combating terrorism of Ukrainian law. The people refer to this article to sue and to get compensation. The damages should be paid by the government to these people. Then the government sue the criminals. I think that even not lawyers can understand this article of the law, but the criminal proceedings are pending for years. The government demonstrates some vague position. The government procrastinates appeals, and the cassational instances are now trying those cases. There is no political will to comply with the law which is in effect in Ukraine. Of course, health and lives are more important, but the property is also important where people lose their sources of incomes and can't earn their living then. So this is in brief about what I put into my section of the report. Now I'm giving the floor to Irina. Good afternoon, everyone. My section is titled in the Batman's jail. It is about illegal in jailing of persons. Is it the war or not? If I will tell you, the Russian group of fast response Batman, it was acting in Lugansk region in 2014. The report doesn't concern combats. The report concerns the attitudes, treatment both to civilians and military men who were in captivity of this military unit, Batman. Of course, we cannot talk about military servicemen. My report contains 11 interviews. Interviews were 3 to 4 hours long. The interviews were used to document the human rights violations for the International Criminal Court. There were additional questions also, how people see themselves in this situation, how they see how this war would end. We do not want to name them victims. We would name them the respondents. It is very hard to think about what was happening to them. The unit of fast response was very cruel, even compared to other illegal military mercenaries on the uncontrolled territories of Ukraine. Looking into the information, Alexander Bednov was chaired this human, unit, and he titled this unit the Batman. He had his own political views and specifics, but this helped to survive, to escape to some those captives. There was the Russian operation when grenades were launched onto this unit. The illegal jails, they were just some pits or private houses. They were in the city of Lugansk. People were held in the university after Dal. In different basements, hostages were kept. So we found those people and we surveyed them, interviewed them. We know the human rights violations such as cruel treatment, tortures, killings, sexual and gender violence. Sexual and gender violence was not only towards the women but also towards the men. It was of different nature. Males were humiliated and questioned, so to this end they were tortured with sexual violence. The motives differed. Also the hostages were forced forced labor was applied to them. They unloaded weights of humanitarian aid. They dug the fortification structures. There were many cases of murders. When I am telling you about these cases, which I presented in the report, I didn't believe that this happened. When one person is saying this, but when 2, 3, or 4 persons who are not connected, which not associated between them, then you start to understand the severeness of the situation. For example, to get in jail, you should not have some pro-Ukrainian position. We understand when they in jailed or held in captivity pro-Ukrainian persons or volunteers or military servicemen of Ukrainian army, you just could pass the Batman's car and he would jail you, or your neighbor could report to the Batman that you are a spotter. One woman who was a hostage, she heard the conversation between the mercenaries. We need 10 women for the works, but we have only 3. So next day they really had 10 women for the works. Those basements, those jails were the base of slaves of this Batman. Some bikers or other groups could address Batman and ask him for slaves, for free of charge laborers. So any person could get to this basement, just any passerby. We interviewed the respondents and some people who were sympathizing this illegal government. They also could get into basements or to the forced labor force ranks. How they were kept? They didn't have food, they didn't have enough water. All these things are described in the report. Females and males were kept together. One cell was where military men were in captivity together with mercenaries. So the Ukrainian army, military men, and Lugansk People Republic mercenaries were kept together in this cell. You just think about, you just imagine what moral damages both parties, both stakeholders were inflicted. For me, this issue is painful and important. I tried to keep distance so that I am unbiased, but first I demonstrated cruelty in the first my version, but I was told by editors to mitigate this part. So what I wrote is quite mitigated. I would like to add about the sections which are not reported about today, because we have the authors from Stanitsa Luganska, Severodonetsk, Ivano-Frankivsk, so they are not present today here. Anyway, I think that the topics which they touched, they really are valuable. The first is about 4 stories of people who didn't choose this war, but they became victims of this war. The first story is about the mother who was on her way with her child, and the shell damaged her and killed her child. And there are dozens of such stories. And the second story is about shelling on Bakhmut. Volunteer of Bakhmut source, she addressed this topic because she has a child, and once in her life she covered her child with her body when during one shell, and this shell exploded in her yard. The author who researched this topic, she said that the coverage of Bakhmut shelling was very fragmented, so not well covered in the sources, in the mass media sources. During this shelling, the kindergartens were damaged, the children, and also the schools were shelled all. It was targeted shelling on the school and kindergarten, so the work on collecting the information about human rights violations would not stop on this book. Thanks to NGO, German NGO Vostra, we also write other books on justice for civilians, so we invite the journalists for cooperation, and in future we plan to demonstrate the exhibition about victims of this war. It would be the traveling exhibition, and you will have the opportunity to see it in the center and in the south of the country. So we demonstrate the stories which can touch everyone there about people, civilians, about children who are deceased, and this will help to build a dialogue.
Now questions, please. If there are no questions, I have several questions. First to Alina, who delivered medical assistance. Out of what you heard from people, do we have the imbalance among the regions? What problems with medical assistance the regions face? Some regions are in better situation, some other regions are in a bad situation because the medicines are not delivered there properly. So I was not able to provide proper analysis of this situation because it is difficult to study each settlement, but we really want to do this, and I hope that sooner or later we will be able to do this. We should interview more people, those who live there, those who use those services. And out of the major trend, we may see that people in frontline areas, for them, it is difficult to get medical assistance, and it is more difficult for them to get medical assistance and medicines because there are no hospitals, because the doctors and the nurses fled because they fear the situation, and there are only mobile groups. Those doctors, mobile groups formed by international organizations. There are doctors, specialists who have needed medicine, psychologists, or there are separate groups of psychologists, and those mobile groups go to these territories to provide medical help where they have request for this medical assistance. Also a question to Denis and Katerina about people you interviewed, about their fate after this experience of being placed in the basement in that place or in Mariupol. Did they flee? Did they go somewhere else? What is their life right now? So these people are still in Mariupol. It is controlled by Ukrainian power. They continue their living there, and they made some corrections because of the shellings, because previously they had some work, and then they changed their life because of these shellings. But in the majority of cases, if we are speaking about those who experienced that damage, physical damage, we understand that people, they need medicines, they need proper treatment, they need proper care, attention from the state, and they do not have it at the moment because we do not have sustainable policy in this area. So previously there was government help and the help from the government organizations, but now the interest faded away, and people are now face these problems on their own. And this is one of the main issues we should draw attention of the state to the fate of these people. So our report is called "To Live Despite It All." So some time passed. We interviewed people, not right after the event, but in several years. Honestly, I'm really surprised that some people, the majority, found the strength to live further. I cannot say that everything is okay. These people, they have some problems with their health. Most of these people have health problems, both moral and physical problems. These people had to go away. Those who were in Lugansk or in uncontrolled territories, they had to flee. So families are broken. Sometimes family members do not support pro-Ukrainian position. But there were some cases, and I was really surprised when one of the interviewed, he was really treated badly because of his pro-Ukrainian position. He supported the Ukrainian side, and he provided opportunity to armed forces of Ukraine to be placed on his land, and he was treated badly, and he fled, and he is now living in the center in Ukraine, and he now he has his business, and he employed many people. He didn't have some money, but he started a business in agriculture, and of course it is difficult. We see that this person, he is not in a very good situation, but for me this was a pleasant surprise that he succeeded. Concerning captives, military hostages, some of them are disabled, but they try to, I know some of them before they got in captivity. Some of those guys, one of these people, he signed a contract, and he continues to fight. And sometimes you are really amazed that people find strength to continue their life in such a difficult situation. And about the problems connected with government state support, people went through captivity. This was real capture, and people do not have proper documents, and now they have to prove in the courts they were in captivity, and they followed the investigators or SBU or military prosecutor's office. They have to prove that they were in captivity and they were tortured. They provide evidence against those people who tortured them. But in some situations we see that there is no criminal investigation because it is not proven that they were in captivity. So this is a closed circle. But why these people lost their health, where they were during this long time? So there are some problems connected with this. We do not quarrel. We understand that this war was unexpected, and our law enforcement bodies were not quick to respond, but we have 5th year of war and we have to do something. So some people who were illegally detained or stayed in captivity, they join in some organizations and they try to fight for their rights, to lobby their interests. They do not have a compensation or help. One of the problems, this man who has his business now in Lugansk, he had a business, he had a loan, he went back to Ukrainian territory, and now They try to get this loan out of him, and he cannot prove that he was in captivity during this time. So we collect evidence about the problems people face after they get out of captivity, and also those people who were in shelling. So those people you communicated with, they are all in the controlled territories, right? Yes, my respondents are in controlled territory. Do you have other questions? I would like to add one remark. In my report, I noted the information about medical help to people who were freed. So this is medical help provided in controlled territories. We see the trend that after the release from captivity, where people suffered torture and their health was damaged because of the torture, so no one cares about these people. No one provided timely medical help to them. They were not examined and checked, and no one checked their condition after torture and the stress situation. It is not recorded and it cannot be added to the materials of investigation. And as Katerina said, it doesn't provide opportunity to prove that this person was in captivity. And if this information was present, it would be easier to prove that this person was in this difficult situation. Please, dear colleagues, your final remarks, if you do not have them. If there are no final remarks, thank you. This is the end of press briefing. I would like to add a final remark. I would like to thank the team that worked on this report. This is a huge work. 1 year ago, we've discussed this idea, and now we present this book. So we had a full year to carry out this colossal work. So I would like to thank NGO Oleostro from Germany, in person of Felix Szmański-Dar, Simon Szegel and Alina Bodnar, who worked on this book, on editing, and we thank NGO, Eastern-Ukrainian Center for Civil Initiatives, who really contributed to this book. And we thank each of the co-authors who created this book and who provide presentations throughout Ukraine. And this is really important for those people who provided evidence to us. After going from the East, they said that they want that these stories were known to the whole Ukraine in order that people know about the war and about the consequences of this war for people. Thank you. This is the end of press briefing.